They say humiliation hits harder when you least expect it. And for me, it came in the form of a blinking red word on a grocery store screen. Declined. The cashier shifted uneasily, tapping the reader as though it might change its mind. A man 2 customers back muttered just loud enough, "Guy's wearing a watch that probably costs more than my truck, but he can't buy cereal." Laughter rippled through the line like wildfire catching dry grass. I, Tyler Brandt, had been many things in my life. CEO. Innovator. The media's favorite headline. But in that moment, in a small-town Georgia supermarket, I was reduced to nothing more than a joke. A woman behind me chuckled, shaking her head. Must be one of those influencers pretending to be broke for clicks. Pathetic. Another teenager, his voice cracking with amusement, leaned toward his friend. Dude looks like a Wall Street vampire. No Wi-Fi for your crypto wallet today? I didn't answer. My throat tightened, and I stared at the screen like if I focused hard enough, it would reverse itself. My chest burned. The humiliation wasn't just about the money, it was about the eyes. Dozens of them, drilling into me, writing their own stories about who I was. Then, cutting through the mockery like a knife through glass, came a small voice. "You can take my money, mister." At first, I didn't move. Didn't even register it. The line kept buzzing with chuckles and side remarks. But then the voice came again, louder, clearer. I said, "You can take my money." Gasps. Snorts. Someone hissed, "Oh, Lord, now a kid's got a cover for Mr. Armani here." I turned, slowly, heart pounding in disbelief. She couldn't have been more than 8. A little black girl, no taller than my hip, stood with her chin lifted, eyes bright but steady. Her hair was braided in 2 thick plaits, and her sneakers were scuffed from the playground. She held out a small cloth bag. It sagged with quarters, dimes, ragged bills. To her, it was treasure. And to me, it was like being struck in the chest. "I can't take that," I said softly, shaken more by the crowd's cruel eyes than by her offer. "That's yours. You should keep it." Her head tilted, the braids swinging. "But you need it right now. And my mom says if someone's standing alone, you stand next to them. That's what good people do." Silence spread across the line. Not kind silence, judgmental silence. People muttered under their breath, some shaking their heads. A man in overalls snorted, "Kid's got more class than him." My vision blurred unexpectedly. Tears, threatening to fall. My pride screamed at me to walk away, to flash my ID, to reclaim some shred of dignity. But her gesture, pure, fearless, rooted me to the spot like an anchor. "What's your name?" I asked quietly. She smiled. Not nervous, not shy. Bright and fearless. "Anna." The name hit me like a bell in a quiet room. Anna. A child with nothing in her hands except pocket change, yet she had given me more humanity than a lifetime of investors and boardrooms. "Anna," I repeated, crouching slightly so we were eye to eye. "That's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a very long time." From behind us, a teenager chuckled. "Bet this guy's got 5 Lamborghinis and not one working debit card." Anna spun around, frowning. "You shouldn't laugh at people when they're down," she shot back. Her voice, clear and unwavering, cut through the store. "That's not brave." The chuckles died instantly. Even the cashier froze, her fingers hovering over the register keys. And then a voice called out from across the aisle. "Anna, baby, where'd you run off to?" A woman in faded blue scrubs hurried over, her eyes widening when she saw the scene. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back hastily, but her presence carried a quiet strength. "I hope she's not causing any trouble, sir." "No trouble at all," I managed, my voice husky. "In fact, she just saved me from a whole lot of shame. The woman gave me a long, curious glance, then looked down at her daughter. What did you do, sweetie? I gave him my emergency money, Anna answered matter-of-factly. His card didn't work, and no one helped him, so I did. The mother blinked, then looked back at me, hesitant, cautious. Well, that sounds like Anna. I forced a smile. My chest ached with something unfamiliar, gratitude, humility, and humiliation twisted into one. Thank you, I said quietly. You okay, sir? She asked, her tone protective, as though shielding her daughter from whatever mess she thought I carried. I am now. They began to walk away, but something inside me broke open. I didn't want this moment to vanish into embarrassment. I needed to hold on to the humanity that child had handed me. Wait. I called after them. They paused, both turning. Would it be all right if I thanked you both properly? My words stumbled out, awkward, unpolished. Maybe, buy you lunch? The mother frowned, suspicion flickering in her eyes. We don't usually. No pressure, I interrupted quickly. I haven't been helped like that in a very long time. Not without someone wanting something back. A long pause stretched. The crowd had already dispersed, losing interest now that the spectacle was over. But for me, everything had changed. There's a place down the street, the woman said at last, her voice reluctant but not dismissive. Mavis's Diner. Good food. Real cheap. I nodded eagerly. I'll meet you there. As they walked away, the weight of the moment settled over me like a heavy coat. Not just the embarrassment of being mocked, but the clarity that followed. A little girl had stood beside me when an entire crowd chose mockery. I glanced once more at the card reader, declined, still glaring red. But somewhere inside, something else had been accepted. Something banks or credit scores could never measure. Outside, the Georgia sun was blinding. I stepped into the heat, into the hum of cicadas and the scent of asphalt. My dusty old Chevy truck sat waiting, but I didn't climb in right away. I just stood there, blinking into the sky, hearing her voice echo. You can take my money, mister. And in that sentence, I heard something else, something I hadn't heard in years. You still matter. Even if they don't know who you are. That was the beginning. And it all started with a little girl who refused to let me stand alone. Mavis's Diner sat on the corner of Main and Rosewood, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the afternoon heat. I parked my dusty Chevy outside, still unsure what exactly I was doing. My instinct screamed to run, to disappear before the humiliation of that grocery store became gossip fuel for the whole town. But Anna's small voice still echoed in my ears, steady and unwavering. You can take my money, mister. I couldn't walk away from that. The diner's glass door jingled as I stepped inside. The scent of fried chicken and coffee hung in the air, clinging to the red leather booths and checkered linoleum floor. The place was alive with chatter, truckers at the counter swapping stories, a young couple bent over milkshakes, an old man stirring his coffee like time itself depended on it. And there, in a booth near the back, sat Anna and her mother. Anna's eyes lit up the moment she saw me. She waved enthusiastically, almost knocking over her glass of water. Mr. Tyler. Over here. Her mother's eyes narrowed slightly, protective, cautious. But she didn't tell her daughter to sit down. Instead, she gave me a measured look, one that said she hadn't decided whether to trust me yet. I approached slowly, every step feeling like it carried the weight of judgment. When I reached the booth, I smiled faintly. Is this seat taken? Anna grinned. It's yours. Her mother hesitated. Finally, she sighed and gestured toward the booth. Go ahead. I slid into the seat, the vinyl squeaking under me. For a moment, none of us spoke. The waitress, a cheerful woman with faded tattoos along her arm, appeared with a pad in hand. "What can I get you, hon?" I glanced at the menu but my throat felt dry. "Just coffee for now." "You sure?" she asked, scribbling anyway. "Mavis's fried chicken is the best in 3 counties." I nodded weakly. "Maybe later." When she left, Anna leaned forward on her elbows, studying me with wide eyes. "Do you really not have money?" she asked bluntly. I almost choked on my breath. Mara, the mother, shot her daughter a sharp look. "Anna." "What?" Anna asked innocently. "He said his card didn't work." "That happens to you sometimes too." Mara's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes softened as she glanced at me. "She's straightforward." I chuckled, shaking my head. "It's okay. And to answer your question, Anna, I do have money. I just didn't have the right card today." Anna nodded solemnly, like this made perfect sense. "That happens to Mom too." The bank gets confused. Mara exhaled, visibly embarrassed, but I caught something in her expression, a flicker of honesty, maybe even kinship. For the first time in years, I didn't feel judged. The waitress returned with my coffee, steam curling upward. Anna fiddled with her straw wrapper until Mara gently took it from her hands. "Anna, why don't you go wash up before the food comes?" "But now." Anna pouted but slid out of the booth and skipped toward the restroom, her braids bouncing behind her. The silence she left behind was thick. Mara crossed her arms, leaning back against the booth. "Look. I don't know who you are or what your story is. But I know what it looks like when people get hurt. And when I saw you standing there in that grocery store, I recognized that look." Her words pierced deeper than I expected. I cleared my throat. "And what look was that?" She tilted her head, studying me. "A man who built walls so high that when they crack, he doesn't know what to do." I swallowed hard. She was right, though she had no idea how much. "I'm Mara," she said finally, as though offering her name was a kind of truce. "And you already know Anna." "Tyler," I said, reaching across the table. She shook my hand cautiously, her grip strong, steady. The waitress returned with 2 plates of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and collard greens, setting them down in front of Mara and Anna's empty spot. "Best in town," she declared proudly. Anna came bounding back just in time, sliding into the booth with a grin. "Did I miss anything?" "Just the introductions," Mara said, handing her daughter a fork. As they ate, I found myself watching them. The way Anna hummed happily between bites. The way Mara carefully divided her portion, saving half to take home. They didn't have much, but there was warmth here. Real warmth. I realized then how long it had been since I'd sat at a table like this, without bodyguards, assistants, or deals being negotiated over wine. Just a mother, her daughter, and a stranger who felt less like a stranger with every passing moment. Anna looked up mid-bite. "Do you like root beer?" "That's all we have at home." I smiled. "Love it." Mara raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. We talked, about Dawsonville, about Anna's school, about Mara's night shifts at the hospital. She told me about her husband, a nurse who died 5 years earlier in a car accident. She spoke quietly, matter-of-factly, but her eyes betrayed the weight she carried. Anna filled in the silence with chatter about her favorite teacher, her spelling tests, and how she wanted to be someone who helps everyone when she grew up. And as I listened, something shifted inside me. I had been surrounded by people my entire life, boardrooms, press junkets, investors throwing money at me like I was their golden ticket. Yet never had I felt this, seen. When the check came, I slid it toward me before Mara could reach for her purse. "You don't have to," she began. "I want to," I said firmly. "Please. Let me thank you." Her eyes softened, just slightly. She nodded. As we left the diner, Anna skipped between us, clutching her mother's hand with one and my sleeve with the other. Her joy was infectious. "Are you coming to our house?" she asked suddenly. "Anna," Mara warned. "What?" "He doesn't have anywhere to go. He should come. We have spaghetti tomorrow." I laughed, caught off guard. "Spaghetti sounds pretty great, actually." Mara looked at me, wary, measuring. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Just for dinner. Nothing more." And in that moment, standing under the fading glow of the diner's neon sign, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I didn't want to run. I wanted to stay. The next evening, I found myself climbing a narrow set of creaking stairs on Rosewood Lane, following Anna's skipping steps. She moved with the boundless energy only children possess, her braids bouncing like little metronomes keeping time. Mara walked just behind me, her hospital scrubs exchanged for jeans and a faded t-shirt, though her eyes carried the same fatigue of someone who never truly clocked out from work. "You sure you're okay with this?" I asked softly, pausing halfway up the stairs. "Just for dinner," she reminded me, firm but not unkind. "Don't make it more than that." I nodded, humbled. "Of course." At the top of the stairs, Anna pushed open the door to their apartment. "Welcome to Casa de Awesome," she announced proudly. The space was small, but it radiated warmth. A round dining table with only 3 mismatched chairs stood near the window. A faded sofa sagged with the weight of years, and a hand-drawn calendar hung on the wall with Anna's school events scrawled in bright marker. The scent of spaghetti sauce drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the faint detergent smell of freshly laundered clothes. "Sit," Anna ordered, pointing at the sofa. "Do you like root beer? That's all we have." I chuckled, lowering myself onto the couch. "I told you yesterday, I love it." She darted into the kitchen, nearly tripping over her own feet in her excitement. Mara lingered near the doorway, arms folded. "She's a lot like her father was," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Always wanted to help everybody, even when we didn't have much." I hesitated. "Is he?" Her eyes flickered, then steadied. "Gone. 5 years now. Car accident. He was a nurse." She paused, her jaw tightening. "I've been doing it on my own ever since." I nodded, not out of politeness but out of understanding. More than she probably realized. I too knew what it felt like to lose everything, even if my loss had been self-inflicted by greed, pride, and betrayal. Anna returned triumphantly with 2 glasses of root beer, setting one in front of me with a flourish. "Tada." I took a sip. It was warm, flat, the fizz long gone. But I smiled like it was champagne. "Best I've had all day." Anna beamed, sliding onto the couch beside me. "So, do you really live in a truck?" Mara groaned. "Anna." "It's okay," I said, laughing. "No, I don't live in my truck. I'm staying at a motel down the road." Anna tilted her head, studying me with the same fearless curiosity she had shown in the grocery store. "Why?" I hesitated. "How do you tell an 8-year-old that you ran from the life you built? That you let the world call you a ghost, a failure, because you couldn't stomach who you'd become?" "Sometimes," I said slowly, "you need to step away from things, to figure out who you really are without them." She seemed to accept that, nodding sagely as though she'd just been handed a profound secret. Dinner was simple: spaghetti with Jared sauce, a side of garlic bread, and a small salad that Anna proudly announced she had made all by myself. The noodles were slightly overcooked, the bread a little too crispy, but it was one of the best meals I'd had in years. Not because of the food, but because of the laughter. Anna recounted her day at school, dramatizing every detail with hand gestures and sound effects. Mara listened patiently, occasionally correcting details or reminding her to eat. I sat back, absorbing the rhythm of it all. The way they moved around each other so naturally. The way their world felt stitched together not by wealth but by resilience and care. Halfway through the meal, Anna turned to me with sudden seriousness. "Do you know how to spell serendipity?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "It's my spelling word," she explained, sliding a crumpled worksheet across the table. "Can you spell it?" I glanced at Mara, who raised an eyebrow, amused. "Serendipity, I recited carefully. Anna's eyes widened. "You're good." I laughed, shaking my head. "That's a pretty big word for second grade." "I like big words," she said proudly. "They make me feel smart." Mara chuckled, sipping her water. "She's always been that way. Her dad used to bring home medical books, and she'd pretend to read them." "Maybe she'll be a doctor one day," I offered. "Or a helper," Anna said brightly. "Like you." The room went quiet for a beat. The word hung there, heavy but light all at once. A helper. Not a billionaire. Not a CEO. Not a man haunted by his failures. Just, a helper. My chest tightened. After dinner, while Mara cleaned the dishes, Anna dragged me to the small balcony overlooking the street. She pressed a tiny painted stone into my hand, its surface purple with little stars and crooked letters that spelled, "Be the helper." "I made it in art class," she said shyly. "You can keep it so you remember to help even when you're sad." I swallowed hard, the stone warm in my palm. "I'll carry it everywhere." Inside, Mara's voice floated through the open door. "Bedtime, Anna." Anna groaned but hugged me fiercely before shuffling off to her room. Mara stepped out onto the balcony, drying her hands on a towel. She looked at me for a long moment, then at the stone in my hand. "You don't have to prove anything here," she said quietly. "This town doesn't care who you used to be. Just who you are when someone needs help moving a couch or fixing a roof." I nodded, throat tight. "That sounds like a fair trade." We stood in silence for a while, the night sounds of Dawsonville wrapping around us, crickets, distant laughter, the hum of a small town winding down. And for the first time in years, I felt still. Not running, not hiding, not fighting to be seen. Just still. When I finally left, the purple stone weighed heavy in my pocket. And for once, the weight didn't feel like a burden. It felt like hope. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay on the stiff motel mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling as the hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. The purple stone Anna had given me sat on the nightstand, its crooked letters catching the dim light from the street lamp outside. "Be the helper." The words mocked me almost as much as they comforted me. Because for most of my life, I had been anything but a helper. I used to be Tyler Brandt, the golden boy of Silicon Valley. The magazines called me a visionary, a disruptor. Investors threw billions my way, eager to buy into the next revolution I promised. My face was plastered on the covers of Forbes and Fast Company before I was 35. I gave keynote speeches in front of arenas packed with thousands, all of them hanging on my every word. And I believed it. Every headline, every cheer, every hand that reached out to shake mine, I swallowed it all like oxygen. But the higher you climb, the harder the air gets to breathe. I built an empire on speed and ambition, but empires are fragile things. A missed call here, a delayed product there, one partner making promises he couldn't keep. Then the market turned. And suddenly, my name wasn't a miracle anymore. It was a punchline. I still remember the headline that broke me. Ghost billionaire, Tyler Brandt disappears amid financial chaos. Ghost. As though I had died but kept walking. What the world never knew, what I never told anyone, was that the fall wasn't just about numbers. It was about betrayal. Jackson Greer, my co-founder, the man I'd once called brother, sold me out to the board when the pressure mounted. He whispered poison into their ears, painted me reckless, unstable. And they believed him. In the end, I walked away. Not with a golden parachute, not with dignity, just with silence. I left my shares on the table, left my reputation in ashes, and vanished before the vultures could circle closer. 3 years of drifting. Hotels, backroads, cheap motels where no one recognized me. I grew a beard, cut my hair short, traded Armani for old denim. I thought anonymity would heal me. But it didn't. It just made the emptiness louder. And then came Dawsonville. A town too small to care about tech moguls or billion-dollar valuations. A town that measured worth in church potlucks and who showed up when the neighbor's roof leaked. I had walked into that grocery store just trying to buy cereal. Just a man among men. And the world had still found me. The laughter in that checkout line was different from the headlines, but it pierced just the same. Because humiliation doesn't care about scale. It finds you in boardrooms, in newspapers, or in front of a broken card reader. I rolled over, covering my face with my hands. Why had Anna stepped forward? Why had a little girl with nothing but scuffed shoes and pocket change seen me when no one else did? I didn't know the answer. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep running. The next morning, I drove aimlessly through town. Dawsonville streets wound like veins through pine trees and weathered houses. I passed the courthouse, the old jail, the diner where Mara worked shifts when the hospital allowed her time. Everywhere I looked, people waved to each other, paused to chat on sidewalks, carried groceries into each other's homes. Community. A word that had become foreign to me. I parked near the town square and wandered into a hardware store. The bell above the door chimed, and the man behind the counter raised an eyebrow. "Didn't expect you here," he said. "You need cash, right?" His tone carried no malice, just blunt expectation. I nodded. "Yeah. I need a shovel, 2 bags of mulch, and some paint." His eyebrow rose higher. "What for?" I hesitated. The answer felt ridiculous even as it left my mouth. "I'm fixing the playground behind the community center." The man stared at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, he rang up the supplies. By late afternoon, I was knee-deep in weeds behind the rusted swing sets and broken seesaws of Dawsonville's forgotten park. Sweat clung to my shirt. Dirt caked under my fingernails. My body ached in ways I hadn't felt in years, not from deadlines or board meetings, but from actual labor. And yet, with every plank I tightened, every patch of dead grass I tore up, something inside me loosened. The laughter from the grocery store still echoed in my mind. But layered over it now was Anna's voice, steady and unyielding. "You didn't fall. You just had a money hiccup. Maybe dignity wasn't about what people saw. Maybe it was about what you did when no one was looking." As the sun dipped low, I sat on the edge of the swing set, wiping my brow. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about stock prices or headlines. I was thinking about a little girl's crookedly painted stone, and a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders without complaint. And I realized something terrifying. I wanted to stay. Not just for tonight. Not just for spaghetti. But for whatever this town, this family, might offer me. But staying meant something else too. It meant the past would find me. And it did, sooner than I expected. By sunrise the next morning, I discovered the past had a cruel way of following me, even when I thought I'd outrun it. I sat at the corner booth of Mavis's diner, a plate of cold eggs in front of me, the smell of burnt coffee lingering. My phone buzzed again and again, the screen lit with notifications. At first, I ignored it. I hadn't checked social media in months. Maybe years. But the vibration was relentless, a reminder that silence didn't mean safety anymore. Finally, I unlocked it. And there it was. A grainy video of me standing frozen at the Dawsonville grocery store, the red word declined flashing above the register. The caption read, "When your billions don't work at checkout. #Billionaire blues." The comments were worse than the headline. Bet he cried into his Lamborghini later. Wall Street vampire can't even buy milk. Some billionaire. My grandma's got more working credit than this guy. Another version of the video had circus music overlaid, my image edited so Monopoly money rained down around me as I stood there like a fool. Millions of views. Dozens of reposts. I closed my eyes, shame rising like bile. I'd been famous before. Not admired, not even loved, but visible. A name people used. But this? This was ridicule. Raw, unfiltered, merciless. The waitress, a young woman with faded tattoos, noticed my expression. She raised her brow, then leaned toward the cook behind the counter. They whispered, trying not to look at me, but I knew. Everyone knew. I threw down enough cash to cover the bill and a tip, then pushed out of the booth. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through mud. Outside, the Georgia heat pressed down. The town felt smaller now, suffocating. I shoved my hands into my pockets, trying to ignore the sting in my chest. "Hey, Tyler." The voice was small, high, unshaken by the weight of the world. I looked up. Anna was waving from across the street, her powder blue backpack bouncing as she ran toward me. Mara followed more slowly, her expression unreadable. "You left your sunglasses yesterday," Anna said, holding them out like treasure. I crouched down, forcing a smile. "Thanks, Anna. You saved my eyesight." She giggled, then brightened. "I saw your face on my mom's phone this morning. You're famous now." Mara winced slightly, her jaw tightening. "Sometimes being famous just means more people laugh when you fall," I said softly. Anna wrinkled her nose. "That's dumb. You didn't fall. You just had a money hiccup." Her words, simple and unpolished, cracked something inside me. "You make it sound less tragic," I murmured. "It wasn't tragic," she replied firmly. "It was just real." Mara's eyes softened as she listened, but she still placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Come on, Anna. You'll be late for school." We walked together toward the school gate. Along the way, the stairs started. A man pumping gas at the corner station smirked and called out, "Hey, card working today?" His chuckle was sharp, unkind. I forced a polite nod. "Hope so. You might want to check your GoFundMe," he added. "Internet's got jokes." I kept walking, jaw tight. Anna skipped ahead, humming, blissfully unaware of the heat around me. But Mara wasn't blind. She gave me a sideways glance. "You sure you're up for this? Dawsonville's kind, but it's also nosy." I nodded grimly. I've been humiliated in front of millions before. But this feels worse. "Because it's personal now?" she asked. "Because it's face to face," I admitted. At the gate, children swarmed the playground, laughter ringing through the air. Anna turned suddenly and hugged me tightly around the waist. "Don't let the laughing people make you sad." My throat tightened. "I'll try." She beamed, then ran toward her friends. I watched as she joined a small cluster of kids near the slide. But as she approached, I noticed the way their eyes shifted. Whispers. Pointing fingers. "That's him," one boy muttered, loud enough to carry. "That's the guy in the video." Another boy laughed. "The billionaire who couldn't pay for groceries." My dad showed me. Anna's head snapped up, her braids whipping behind her. "Don't talk about him like that," she said fiercely. The boys snickered. "Why not? He's a joke." Anna planted her feet, fists clenched at her sides. No. He's my friend. And he helps people. That's not a joke. The playground quieted. Even the teacher on duty glanced over, startled by the little girl's fire. The boys hesitated, suddenly less certain. Anna's voice carried, strong and unwavering. You don't laugh at people when they're down. That's not brave. The words echoed, the same words she had spoken in the grocery store. A chill ran down my spine. Some of the kids looked away, shuffling their feet. One of the boys muttered something under his breath, but softer now, less cruel. And just like that, Anna turned, her chin high, and walked back toward the swings. Her friends followed. I stood frozen at the gate, heart hammering. In a world that mocked, ridiculed, and tore people down, an 8-year-old girl had stood tall. For me. Mara looked at me then, something unspoken passing between us. Respect. Maybe even trust. She's stronger than I ever was at that age, Mara murmured. I swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in my eyes. She's stronger than I am right now. As Anna swung higher and higher, her laughter carrying across the playground, I realized the truth. The internet could mock me. Strangers could sneer. My past could haunt me. But here, in this small town, one little girl had chosen to believe in me. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to believe in me too. The following Saturday, I woke before dawn. The motel room was still, the hum of the air conditioner steady in the background. On the nightstand, the purple stone caught the dim light seeping through the blinds. I rolled it between my fingers, the crooked letters be the helper pressing against my skin. I carried it with me when I drove back into town. The community playground sat behind the old brick building that doubled as Dawsonville's community center. Once, it must have been a place of joy, bright paint, laughter echoing through the air. Now it was little more than a graveyard of rust and weeds. The swings dangled from chains so corroded they squeaked at the slightest breeze. The slides' paint peeled in long strips, the metal warped from years of rain and sun. The sandbox was a swamp of weeds and cigarette butts. I set down the supplies I'd bought the day before, shovels, mulch, buckets of paint, and a toolbox. It was almost laughable. A man once worth billions, now standing alone with a borrowed hammer and 2 gallons of sky blue paint. But somehow, it felt right. I started with the weeds. By noon, I was drenched in sweat, my hands blistered, my shirt clinging to me like regret. I pulled out rotten planks from the old seesaw, replaced rusted bolts, sanded down the jagged edges of the slide. My body ached in ways no boardroom battle had ever left me aching. But each nail I hammered, each weed I pulled, loosened something in me I hadn't realized was wound so tight. By mid-afternoon, curious eyes began to gather. Mrs. Stover, a retired schoolteacher, paused on her walk with her dachshund. She stood at the fence, shading her eyes. Ain't seen anyone touch that playground in 10 years, she remarked. Thought I'd give it a shot, I replied, wiping my brow. She nodded slowly. Good on you. Then she kept walking, but not without a backward glance. Later, 2 teenage boys on bicycles stopped, snickering at first. One of them called out, "Hey, card working today?" I braced myself. But before I could respond, the other nudged him. Shut up, man. He's fixing the swings. They lingered for a while, watching. Eventually, one asked if I needed help tightening bolts. I handed him a wrench. The other boy joined in, though reluctantly. Together we fixed the swing set until the chains no longer screamed in protest. By sundown, the playground looked different. Not finished, but alive again. Fresh paint brightened the slide. The swings held firm. The seesaw creaked less like a dying animal and more like something waiting for laughter. As I packed up my tools, I heard small footsteps. Anna came bounding up the path, Mara following close behind in her faded scrubs. "Mr. Tyler!" Anna shouted. "You fixed it." I smiled, exhaustion melting under her excitement. "Not all of it. But it's a start." She ran to the swing set, testing it with a delighted squeal as the chains held steady. Mara watched her for a long moment before turning to me. Her eyes, usually guarded, softened just slightly. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I did," I answered quietly. "Because a little girl gave me $10 and reminded me what being human looks like." For a long time, she didn't reply. Then, finally, she said, "Thank you." It was just 2 words. But coming from her, it felt like absolution. That night, I sat on the motel bed, the purple stone warm in my palm, and realized something important. The world had taken everything from me, my empire, my name, my pride. But in Dawsonville, I had found something the world couldn't give me. A reason to stay. And for the first time, I wasn't running. The following evening, after I'd spent another day sanding down the splintered edges of the jungle gym, Mara invited me back for dinner. I tried to decline, out of pride, out of fear of intruding, but Anna wasn't taking no for an answer. She had grabbed my hand with that stubborn little grip of hers and declared, "Helpers eat together." So there I was again, walking up the creaking stairs to their apartment, carrying a brown paper bag filled with peach cobbler I'd bought from a bakery 2 towns over. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small offering, something to say thank you without words. Inside, the scent of spaghetti sauce was replaced tonight by baked chicken and roasted vegetables. Anna darted between the table and the kitchen, setting mismatched plates and proudly announcing that she was the waitress. Mara moved with a tired grace, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. We ate quietly at first, the rhythm of knives and forks filling the silence. Anna's chatter eventually loosened the air, her stories tumbling out about school projects, a new friend who liked to trade stickers, and her firm belief that she could one day run faster than the boys on the playground. I laughed at her certainty, and Mara shook her head with mock exasperation. "She gets that from her father," she said softly. Her words hung there, and for a moment, the room grew still. Anna glanced down at her plate, fidgeting with her fork. Mara cleared her throat and continued, her voice gentler this time. "He was a nurse. Night shifts, long hours, always tired but never too tired to read her a bedtime story. 5 years ago, a car accident. He never made it home from the ER." Silence blanketed the table. I saw the flicker in Mara's eyes, the kind of grief that doesn't scream anymore, just lingers like a scar you can't cover. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She gave a small nod. "We've managed. It's not easy, but Anna, she's strong." "I can see that," I replied, glancing at the girl now poking her green beans into shapes on her plate. Mara sighed, sitting back. "Sometimes I worry, though. She's got a big heart. Wants to help everybody. The world isn't always kind to that." Her words struck me harder than I expected. Because I knew what it meant to be unkind to myself, to others, in pursuit of ambition. And I knew what it was to live in a world that cheered when you fell. "You're right," I said slowly. "The world can be cruel. But sometimes people like Anna remind us how to be better." Mara studied me, her eyes narrowing slightly as though weighing the sincerity in my words. After a long pause, she nodded. Dinner ended with Anna bouncing up to show me her latest art project, a series of crayon drawings of super helpers. One was a stick figure with a purple stone in its hand. She grinned when I recognized it. "That's you," she said proudly. The next morning, I was back at the playground before the sun fully cleared the pines. This time, I wasn't alone. Word had spread. A handful of townspeople trickled in, two of the teenagers who had helped with the swings, Mrs. Stover with her dachshund tied gently to a post, and even the young cashier from the grocery store who had witnessed my humiliation firsthand. They brought brushes, rags, even sandwiches. "We figured you could use some help," the cashier said, a sheepish smile on her face. I looked at them, momentarily speechless. Then I handed out brushes and tools, and together we worked. By afternoon, the playground looked transformed. Bright yellow paint glowed on the seesaw, the slide shimmered a deep firetruck red, and the swings carried children for the first time in years. Laughter rang out, the kind that carries across a town and makes people pause in their chores just to listen. I leaned against the fence, watching Anna soar high on the swing, her braids flying. Mara stood beside me, her arms folded but her smile unmistakable. "You've started something," she said quietly. I shook my head. "Anna started it. I'm just following her lead." Mara glanced at me, the corners of her mouth tugging upward. "Maybe so. But you're the one showing the rest of us what it looks like when someone stays." Her words sank into me like roots pushing into soil. For years, I had been a man who ran, from the headlines, from betrayal, from myself. And now, for the first time, I wasn't running. That night, as the sun set and the townspeople drifted home, I stayed behind. I sat on the new bench we had installed, paint still tacky beneath my fingers, and pulled the purple stone from my pocket. The laughter had faded, replaced by the hum of cicadas and the occasional bark of a dog. I held the stone tightly and whispered into the dusk. "I'm trying, Anna," I said softly. "I'm really trying." For the first time in years, I felt like maybe that was enough. The playground smelled of fresh paint and cut grass. Children's laughter bounced against the brick walls of the community center, mixing with the metallic creak of the newly fixed swings. For the first time in years, Dawsonville's forgotten park had life again. I sat on the bench, my shirt still streaked with yellow paint, watching Anna climb the monkey bars like she was conquering Mount Everest. Mara sat nearby, sipping from a thermos of lukewarm coffee, her tired eyes softened by the sight of her daughter's joy. For a moment, I thought maybe this could last. But peace doesn't stay quiet forever. "Excuse me," a voice said. I turned. A woman stood at the edge of the playground. She wore jeans and a dark green blazer, city clothes in a small town. A notebook was tucked under her arm, and her eyes, sharp and searching, locked onto me. "Tyler Brandt?" she asked. The air seemed to shift. My chest tightened. The name sounded foreign here, like a ghost dragged out of hiding. "Depends who's asking," I said cautiously. She stepped closer, offering a hand I didn't take. "Abigail Tran. Independent journalist. I'm working on a piece about you." Mara bristled, standing protectively beside me. "We don't need trouble," she said flatly. Abigail gave her a measured smile. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because the world deserves to hear what's really happening. A billionaire vanishes, shows up in a small Georgia town, gets humiliated in a grocery store, and then starts rebuilding a playground with his own hands. That's not just gossip. That's a story." I stiffened. "I didn't ask for a story." "No," she said. "But stories have a way of finding you. You, of all people, should know that." I glanced at Mara, whose jaw tightened in quiet disapproval. Anna had stopped climbing the monkey bars and was watching us now, her head tilted with curiosity. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Abigail shrugged, flipping open her notebook. "The truth. No spin, no headlines written by people who've never met you. Just, why here? Why now? Why this playground?" I stared at the peeling paint on the bench beside me, the grooves of weathered wood. The truth was messy, complicated, and dangerous. The truth was Jackson Greer and the boardroom betrayal. The truth was a billion-dollar empire I'd walked away from. But none of that was for her. Not yet. There's nothing to tell, I said finally. Just a man fixing what's broken. She studied me with those sharp reporter's eyes. Funny. That's not what your former colleagues are saying. Ice slid through my veins. You've spoken to them? Some, she said. Enough to know you didn't leave quietly. Enough to know the story isn't finished. Mara stepped in then, her voice firm. He doesn't owe you anything. Abigail's gaze softened slightly as she looked at her. I'm not here to hurt him. I'm here to understand. People laugh at him now, but they don't know why he stayed. Why he chose this instead of hiding in some penthouse. If you let me tell it, maybe they'll see the man instead of the meme. I clenched my fists. My instinct screamed to walk away. To vanish again before the headlines caught up. But then I looked at Anna, who was now whispering something to her doll, watching me with wide, unblinking eyes. She had believed in me when no one else did. And if Abigail twisted the story, if the world turned its cruel eye back on me, would Anna's faith survive it? I'm not interested in publicity, I said firmly. Abigail didn't flinch. She tore a card from her notebook and placed it on the bench beside me. Then think of it as control. If you don't tell your story, someone else will. And trust me, they won't be as kind. She turned and walked away, her notebook tucked under her arm. At the fence, she paused and glanced back. I'll be in town all week. If you change your mind, call me. Silence fell after she left. Mara crossed her arms, her brow furrowed. I don't trust her. Neither do I admitted. Anna hopped down from the monkey bars, skipping over. She seemed nice, she said innocently. Mara sighed. Not everyone who seems nice is. I pocketed the business card, though it felt heavier than it should. Abigail's words echoed in my mind. If you don't tell your story, someone else will. That night, I sat alone in my motel room, the purple stone warm in my palm. The internet already had its version of me, the joke, the failure, the billionaire who couldn't pay for cereal. Abigail wanted another version. But what if the truth was worse than both? I closed my eyes, the laughter from the grocery store ringing in my ears, layered with Anna's voice cutting through it. You didn't fall. You just had a money hiccup. Maybe that was the only story worth telling. It happened on a Wednesday, just as the cicadas began their late summer chorus. I had left Dolly's coffee shop with a black coffee in hand, planning to head back to the community center to meet a carpenter who'd offered to help fix the old gazebo. I didn't make it to my truck. Mr. Grant. The voice was smooth, low, deliberate. A voice I hadn't heard in years, but one I recognized instantly. I turned slowly. There he was, Jackson Greer. Crisp navy suit in the middle of small-town Georgia, hair slicked back like he'd stepped out of a Manhattan boardroom. Sunglasses dangled from his fingers, his tie loosened just enough to pretend it casual. He leaned against a polished black car that had no business on Dawsonville's cracked streets. Glad you remember me, he said, lips curling into that faint smile I had once trusted. I froze. My throat tightened. Hard to forget the man who handed me my exit papers. Jackson straightened, stepping closer. His eyes glimmered with the same hunger I'd once shared, the kind that devoured everything in its path. You disappeared, he said. No press, no explanation. Just walked away from a company you built. Left your shares on the table. Everyone thought you lost your mind. I sipped my coffee, hiding the tremor in my hand. Maybe I found my peace. He laughed. A sharp, practiced laugh. Peace? Is that what you call this? He gestured around us, to the quiet town square, the faded brick buildings, the mural painted by local kids. You're wasting yourself here. Fixing playgrounds? Hosting spaghetti dinners? You were a leader. You changed industries. You had the world in your hands. I turned to walk away, but he followed, his voice sharp. You could have cleared your name. You still can. That video, the one that made you a laughingstock, it doesn't have to define you. You could flip it. Rebrand. Make a comeback. I stopped, anger bubbling. I'm not a product, Jackson. Not a brand. Not your golden goose. His mask slipped, just for a second. You're trending again, Tyler. People are watching. You could use this. They still remember your name. I met his gaze, my voice steady. You know what I remember? Missing my mother's last voicemail because I was closing one of your deals. I remember crushing teams under deadlines so you could brag at conferences. I remember staring in the mirror and not recognizing the man looking back. Jackson's jaw tightened. You think this town can save you? You think repainting a slide makes you a better man? No, I said quietly. But staying here does. Showing up when the lights go out. Listening when someone needs help. That makes me human again. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then Jackson shoved a business card into my pocket. The door's still open, he muttered. But it won't stay open forever. Think hard, Brandt. Because when it closes, you'll regret it. He walked away, sliding back into his black car. The engine roared, too sleek and powerful for these streets. He didn't look back. I stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, the business card burning in my pocket. That night, at Mara's dinner table, I barely touched my food. Anna proudly showed me a drawing she'd made of me planting flowers, complete with a speech bubble that said, "Let's build hope." "You've turned into a cartoon," Mara teased, nudging me with her elbow. "Could be worse," I said, managing a smile. She could have drawn me as a goat again. Anna giggled. Goats are funny. Their laughter filled the room, warm and alive. But I couldn't shake Jackson's words. Later, after Anna was asleep, Mara noticed my silence. "You're quiet tonight." "Just thinking," I admitted. "About what?" she pressed gently. I hesitated. Then I told her. About Jackson. About the offer. About the temptation I didn't want to admit was gnawing at me. Her eyes didn't waver. "Do you want that world back?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I thought I left for good reasons, but now it feels like the past is trying to pull me back." Mara leaned closer, her voice firm. "You have changed, Tyler. The man who showed up broke and embarrassed in a grocery store didn't run. He stayed. And the one who fixes playgrounds with a little girl cheering him on, that man isn't the one in your headlines." Her words steadied me. But when I got back to the motel, I pulled Jackson's card from my pocket. I stared at it for a long time, then held it over the flame of a candle Mara had left burning. The edges curled. Then the whole thing caught fire. I dropped it into the sink and watched until it was nothing but ash. I didn't need another empire. I needed purpose. And I'd found it here, in a mural, in a playground, in a crayon-colored stone. The video cut like a knife because it looked exactly like the kind of proof people love to believe. It surfaced just after dawn, when the pines still cast long fingers across the community center and the mural, our mural, breathed under a thin skin of dew. I was halfway through a lukewarm coffee when my phone buzzed with a message from Abigail. "You need to see this. Now." I tapped the link and the world narrowed to a shaky black and white clip. Night. A hooded figure stepping into frame behind the community center, spray can rising, the same wall where kids had pressed their painted hands around the words "Be the helper." The angle was off, like the camera had been tilted by nerves or carelessness. The figure moved with a calm economy that felt deliberate, almost practiced. The can hissed. A fat $sign bloomed across the words. Then, in the worst part, the part that made my stomach lurch, the figure turned just enough for the light to catch the cheekbone and jaw. It looked like me. The caption did the rest of the violence, the truth about Dawsonville's new savior, caught in the act. In the first 10 minutes the post had a few hundred shares. In the next 30, thousands. A man at the gas station who had heckled me about my card last week reposted it with a string of laughing emojis. A regional radio host turned it into a segment, "Is the fallen billionaire really the vandal?" People who'd never stepped foot in Dawsonville were suddenly experts on my intentions. People who had stepped foot here were the ones that hurt. Abigail called. "It's edited," she said fast, breathless. "I can't prove it yet, but the time-stamp jumps. Frames are clipped. It's like someone nudged it to suggest you without showing you." I stared at the paused video. I knew where I was that night, at Mara's table, helping Anna cut cardboard for a science project about the moon's phases. I had sticky fingers from glue and a purple stone warm in my pocket. None of that mattered when a stranger could press play and decide who I was in 6 seconds. "Even if it's doctored," I said, my voice paper thin, "they won't care." "Some will," Abigail said. "The ones who've watched you work. But you need to be ready. Today's going to be a lot." She wasn't wrong. By 9 a.m., the town had rearranged itself into little islands of whispers. Dolly handed me my coffee at the bookshop with a tremor in her smile. "I know it's not you," she said quickly, like if she said it fast enough it would be true for everyone. "But folks are asking questions." Across the square, 2 men spoke in low tones beside a pickup, eyes cutting my way, then away. At the farmer's co-op a woman who'd brought sandwiches to the playground last week passed me in the aisle without a hello. A teenager on a scooter slowed as he rolled by, phone angled like a mirror so he could pretend not to stare. I walked to the mural because where else was I going to go? Up close, the damage looked worse. The white letters we'd painted with such care dripped under the weight of a cheap red slur, "Fake Savior." The purple stone the kids had painted beneath the words had been gouged with something sharp, its outline scarred. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, breath stubbornly shallow. I had seen markets crash in real time, watched entire narratives turn on a single bad headline. But that was numbers and ink and the particular theater of adult cruelty. This was different. This was a wall that held the fingerprints of children and grandmothers and teenagers who'd finally found a place to belong. This was a wound on a town's face. Footsteps behind me. "Mara." She stopped at my shoulder, arms folded, eyes hard. Her gaze flicked over the dollar sign and the slur and then to me. She didn't ask if I'd done it. She didn't need to. "You okay?" she asked instead. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm here." She nodded once, as if confirming a decision she'd already made. "Good. Because we're not going anywhere." Another set of steps. Mr. Jenkins, the retired contractor whose hands looked like they'd been carved from pine and daylight. He took off his cap and swore softly. "Damn shame." Behind him, Mrs. Stover with the dachshund, the cashier from the grocery store who had looked ashamed when I tightened the swing bolts, a cluster of parents, a couple of high school kids with paint flecks still in their hair from the last time we worked this wall. The square kept breathing people toward us until there was a small crowd, no pitchforks, no torches, but something tenuous and brittle that might fracture if handled wrong. Someone near the back cleared his throat. "You got anything to say, Tyler?" I turned. Faces I knew. Faces that had cheered kids on the new slide, faces that had handed me banana bread, faces that had been quiet witnesses to my humiliation and my trying. I lifted the purple stone inside my pocket and let its edges dig into my palm until I could feel my voice again. "I've seen the video," I said. "It looks like me. It's meant to. But it isn't me." A murmur, skeptical, not yet cruel. A man with sawdust on his shirt spit to the side. "Why would someone fake that?" Because I left a world that doesn't forgive, I said. Because some people don't like it when a story stops making money for them and starts making meaning for other people. Because it's easier to break a thing that gives hope than to build it. Sounds convenient, someone else muttered. It sounds true, Mara said, stepping to my side. The tilt of her chin said she was done letting rooms decide the narrative without her voice inside it. He ate dinner at my table that night. He helped my kid with her science project. He didn't sneak around in a hoodie to ruin a wall children painted with their hands. She'd say anything for him, the sawdust man shot back. Mara's eyes narrowed. I didn't say anything when you asked for a casserole after your wife's surgery and the town fed you for 2 weeks. So maybe save the cynicism for people who haven't lifted a finger here. I watched a couple of heads dip, shame pressing their shoulders forward. Abigail slipped to the edge of the group, no blazer today, just a plain shirt and a notebook she didn't open. Her eyes flicked to me, not yet. Let them talk first. Look, I said, raising my hands, palms open. You don't owe me belief. But you owe yourselves the truth. You've seen me here. Not online. You've seen me get it wrong and get it right and ask for help and give it. If a 6-second clip outruns months of showing up, that's not just on me. Silence, this time heavier. Hard truths often land like that, quietly, then with weight. A teenager near the front, Jason, the lanky kid who almost fought at the slide last week, cleared his throat. He stopped me from swinging. Made me shake hands. Doesn't feel like a vandal, sir. The sawdust man rolled a shoulder, conflict sliding across his face. Maybe. But the wall's still ruined. No one argued with that. We all looked at the slashed paint, the dripping letters, the wound we shared whether we wanted to or not. Then we fix it, I said. A woman scoffed softly. Just like that? Just like that, I said. We don't wait for the internet to apologize. We don't wait for an outsider to clear me. We do what this town does when a storm blows a fence down. We pick up hammers. Abigail stepped forward then, just enough to be heard, not enough to own the moment. I'm working on verifying what I told Tyler. The clip is likely tampered with, there are jumps in the time code. I'll publish if I can prove it. But you don't have to wait on me to be who you are. The cashier from the grocery store, cheeks pink, lifted a hand. I can bring brushes. Mr. Jenkins nodded. I got ladders. I can make sandwiches, Dolly called from the sidewalk, her apron dusted with flour like snow. Paint makes folks hungry. More voices. I've got drop cloths. I can keep an eye on the little ones. My nephew does murals, he can sketch an outline. My cousin's got a pressure washer. The brittle thing at the center of the gathering, doubt, fear, the human ache to be on the right side of a story, didn't shatter. It softened. It breathed. It began, slowly, to become something else. I turned back to the wall and laid my palm against the ruined paint, feeling the heat the morning had started to throw against brick. The red drips were still tacky. The letters underneath were scarred but not gone. Maybe that was the only metaphor we needed. 3, I said, glancing at Mara and then at Abigail and then at the crowd. 3 o'clock. We meet here. Bring what you can. If you've got nothing but heart, bring that too. People drifted, the way communities do when an unspoken plan has been drafted and signed in the air. Not everyone left convinced. A couple of men shook their heads as they moved off, and I didn't chase them with words. I didn't have the bandwidth to be everyone's conversion story. I only had enough for the wall. Before she left, Abigail stepped close. Jackson? She asked quietly. He's here, I said. Somewhere. She nodded, jaw tightening. Figures. Why would he want this? I asked, not because I didn't know, but because I needed to say it aloud. Because if you're building something real, she said, then the story isn't his to sell anymore. When the square emptied, it was just me and Mara and the ache in brick. Anna came skidding around the corner a moment later, breathless, a science project moon taped crooked to a piece of cardboard in her hand. Her eyes fell on the wall and went wide. "Who did that?" she asked, voice small and furious at once. "A confused person," I said gently. She frowned, then looked at me like she was measuring the sky with her eyes. "You didn't." "No," I said. "Okay," she answered, as if the whole court had convened and delivered a verdict. She slid her hand into mine. "Then we fix it. And we make it better than before." That was the thing about children, they didn't ask for permission to hope. They just did it, shamelessly, stubbornly, like breathing. I squeezed her hand. 3 o'clock, I told her. "Tell your friends." "I'll tell everyone," she said, and took off like an alarm bell with braids. At 2:58, the first ladder clattered onto the sidewalk. By 3:05, the square hummed. Paint cans clicked open. Drop cloths bloomed. Someone set a speaker on a stoop and Sam Cooke drifted along the brick. Teenagers sketched daisies and tiny shooting stars and a bridge over the purple stone that had once been gouged. Grandmothers leaned on canes and gave color advice no one dared ignore. The sawdust man sanded the rough patch around the slur and, after a long pause, began to paint over it with the slow care of someone apologizing with his hands. I worked a roller along the white letters, steady, even. Beside me, Mara cut clean edges with a small angled brush, the tip of her tongue peeking out in concentration. We didn't talk about the video. We talked about sandwiches and ladder rungs and whether the rainbow arc should bend a little lower to shelter the words. By dusk, the wall no longer looked wounded. It looked layered. Lived in. Not perfect, but honest. The original phrase stood brighter than before, the purple stone now ringed with small handprints in every shade the kids could mix. Above it, in letters that curved like a promise, Jason and 2 of his friends had block painted, "Truth always outlives the noise." When the last brush was rinsed and the last ladder leaned against the building, the crowd thinned with that sleepy satisfaction small towns earn like a paycheck. Some people clapped me on the shoulder. Some didn't. That was fine. The wall knew what we'd done. Mara touched my elbow. "You still okay?" "No," I said, and managed a smile. "But I'm still here." She nodded, and in the falling light I saw it, the thing we'd been building that no video could smear, not a redemption arc, not a brand, not a headline. A we. Fragile as wet paint, stubborn as brick. When I walked away, the purple stone was back in my pocket, warm as if it had its own small heart. I didn't know what tomorrow's feed would look like, which podcasts would snicker, who would DM me screenshots like condolences. I knew only that when an ugly thing landed in the center of town, we hadn't argued it to death. We outworked it. We outkinned it. We outlasted it, if only for a night. And sometimes, a night is all you need to make morning possible. Morning in Dawsonville carried a new weight. The cicadas still screeched from the pines, Dolly's coffee still steamed in chipped mugs, and Anna still skipped across the square with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. But there was something beneath it all now, an invisible hum of tension, like the town itself was holding its breath. The mural had been restored. Brighter, layered, more honest than before. Yet rumors travel faster than paint dries, and the doctored video was still circling, spreading like rot under the skin. Some neighbors nodded when they saw me. Others looked away, their smiles tight, their phones heavy in their hands. When I stepped into the community center that morning, I could feel it in the air, doubt. Not shouted, not sharp. Just present. Abigail was already there, her hair pulled back, her sleeves rolled up. She looked less like a journalist and more like a volunteer who had forgotten how to quit. "You didn't answer my text," she said without preamble. I was busy painting over lies, I muttered. Her eyes softened. You did more than that. You pulled half the town out here. That matters. Not enough, I said. Some people still believe the video. Some people, she countered, believe the earth is flat. You don't build truth by converting everyone, you build it by proving it with your hands. I didn't have an answer. My eyes wandered to the far end of the room, where volunteers were sorting through boxes of dusty books. The library wing, closed for years, was finally reopening. Stacks of volumes leaned like tired travelers against the walls, their spines cracked and pages yellowed but still waiting to be read. Mara stood at a table, tying her hair back with a rubber band while handing pencils to a group of middle schoolers. We'll need a reading nook here, she said firmly, pointing to the sunniest corner. And shelves for history there. And if anyone finds children's books, put them by the front. Kids should see themselves first when they walk in. I lingered at the doorway, watching her command the room with quiet authority. She looked nothing like the weary nurse who had once apologized for her daughter offering me emergency money in a grocery store. She looked like the kind of leader who didn't need a microphone. Anna spotted me and waved wildly. Mr. Tyler, come help. We're making a kid's corner. Her grin cut through the heaviness inside me like sunlight through a storm cloud. I walked over, kneeling beside the stack of picture books. The covers were tattered, but Anna smoothed each one like treasure. Do you like this one? She asked, holding up a battered copy of The Little Engine That Could. I smiled. I think it fits. By noon, the room was buzzing. Retired teachers showed up with crates of old encyclopedias. A carpenter brought plywood for new shelves. Teens hauled furniture out of storage, joking and jostling each other as though lifting a couch was a kind of sport. I worked beside them, sweat dripping down my back as I helped move a heavy oak table into place. With each slam of a hammer, each screw driven into new shelving, something inside me loosened. It was the same sensation I'd felt fixing the swings, purpose, raw and uncomplicated. At one point, Mr. Jenkins, the contractor, clapped me on the shoulder. You work harder than half the kids here, he grunted. Not bad for a billionaire. I gave him a wry smile. Don't tell the internet. By mid-afternoon, the library wing no longer looked abandoned. Sunlight streamed through freshly cleaned windows, catching dust motes that danced above the rows of books. The air smelled of wood polish, paper, and something I hadn't realized I'd missed, possibility. Mayor Walden arrived then, clipboard in hand, his face serious. The chatter hushed as he cleared his throat. Folks, we're dedicating this wing tomorrow. And I think we ought to name it something fitting. A murmur rippled through the room. Suggestions bounced quietly from corner to corner: Community Hall, Hope's Wing, the Reading Room. Then Anna piped up from the kids' nook, her voice carrying farther than anyone expected: the Helper's Corner. The room fell still. Every eye turned to her. She clutched the purple stone she'd given me weeks ago, holding it high like a banner. It should be called the Helper's Corner, she said firmly, because helpers make places safe. Silence stretched, then broke like sunlight through clouds. Applause, soft at first, then growing. Mara's eyes glistened. Even the mayor's stern face cracked into a smile. Then it settled, he said. Tomorrow, we dedicate this place as the Helper's Corner. The applause swelled again, echoing against the fresh paint and old bricks. I found myself clapping too, the sound caught in my chest, threatening to break loose into something deeper. As the crowd dispersed, Abigail came to stand beside me. She wasn't taking notes. She wasn't recording. She just looked at the shelves, then at me. You know what the funny thing is, she said softly. What? You keep telling me you don't want a story. But you're living one anyway. I didn't reply. I couldn't. That evening, after the last volunteer left, I stayed behind to sweep the floor. Mara joined me, drying her hands on a rag. "They believe in you," she said simply. "Some do," I said. "Enough do," she countered. She leaned against the table, studying me. "You're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't you?" I exhaled, the broom heavy in my hands. "Jackson's still out there. And whoever made that video, they're not done." Mara didn't flinch. "Then we keep showing up. Every time they try to tear something down, we build something stronger." Her words lingered long after she left. That night, I sat alone in the empty library wing, the purple stone warm in my palm. Outside, the cicadas droned, and the air smelled faintly of pine and paint. I looked at the mural through the window, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The words stared back at me, unshaken, "Be the helper. Truth always outlives the noise." I didn't know what would come tomorrow. More lies, more attacks, maybe even Jackson himself pressing harder. But for the first time, I felt ready. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about a town that had decided to build, even in the shadow of doubt. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only story that mattered. The day of the dedication dawned golden, the Georgia sun draping Dawsonville in light that seemed almost deliberate, as though the town itself wanted to bless what we were about to do. By mid-morning, the courtyard outside the freshly restored library wing was filled. Folding chairs lined the brick walkways, their metal frames scraping against stone as people settled into place. Moms in floral skirts, dads in work boots, children clutching balloons or clutching each other's hands. Even the mayor wore a suit today, though his tie looked like it hadn't seen daylight in a decade. A homemade banner fluttered in the soft breeze, "The Helper's Corner, dedicated today." I stood near the back, hands shoved deep into my pockets, trying to convince myself that this wasn't about me. My heart pounded anyway. Anna sat proudly in the front row, her legs swinging, her purple stone clutched like a talisman. Beside her, Mara looked steady as always, though I caught the quick glimmer of encouragement in her eyes when she glanced back at me. The mayor stepped up to the wooden podium. His voice carried strong and sure. "Today, we dedicate not just a space, but a spirit. This library wing was closed for years, gathering dust, waiting for hands that cared enough to open it again. And those hands came from you, from every neighbor who lifted, painted, sorted, and dreamed. But sometimes, it takes one spark to remind us that fire still exists. One child. One stranger. One helper. That's why this place will be called the Helper's Corner." The applause rolled across the courtyard, warm and sustained. My palms itched. The mayor turned and gestured toward me. "Mr. Brandt, would you come say a few words?" I froze. My instinct was to shake my head, to stay hidden. But then Anna stood, turned, and gave me a smile so fierce and fearless it pierced me clean through. Her small hand shot up in a thumbs up that was anything but small. So I walked. Each step toward the podium felt like crossing a bridge I'd burned long ago. Faces blurred at the edges of my vision, but when I reached the front, the world sharpened again. I cleared my throat, gripped the edges of the wooden lectern, and let my voice find its way. "Thank you," I began softly. "I didn't come to Dawsonville expecting to find a monument. I came here because a little girl handed me a crumpled $10 bill when my card failed. That did two things: it bought me groceries, and it fed a part of me I didn't know was starving." A ripple went through the crowd, recognition, surprise, maybe even tenderness. I have lived a life chasing headlines, bottom lines, applause lines, I continued, my voice steadier now. And none of those ever changed me. Not really. But this mural, this playground, this library, this changed me. You changed me. I glanced toward the wall where the mural gleamed brighter than ever. The words stared back at me, unbroken: "Be the helper. Truth always outlives the noise." This corner isn't about me, I said, my throat tightening. It's about what happens when people choose to build instead of break. It's about children who remind us that kindness doesn't need an agenda. It's about a town that decided to stand together, even when the world outside wanted to see us fall apart. I want kids to come here, not just to read, but to remember that no act of help is too small, and no one is too proud to need it. Applause broke again, soft at first, then swelling. I stepped back, blinking against the brightness of it all. And then she was there, Anna, running straight to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. She looked up, beaming. Best speech ever. I laughed, choked, crouched down to her level. You're the real speechwriter, kiddo. When I stood again, Mara was watching, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. She mouthed two words I carried with me the rest of the day: you stayed. As the crowd poured into the library to explore its shelves and reading nooks, I lingered by the entrance. Abigail approached, notebook closed, camera forgotten around her neck. You didn't give a speech, she said. You gave the truth. I smiled faintly. Truth doesn't always win. Her eyes flicked to the mural. But it always outlives the noise. Inside, laughter rose as children discovered the kids' nook, parents marveled at the stacks of freshly organized books, and retirees pointed out volumes they'd once read decades ago. The helper's corner wasn't just open. It was alive. And in the middle of the noise, the doubt, the rumors, I felt, for the first time in years, completely seen. The glow of the dedication lingered in Dawsonville for days, like the echo of a hymn long after the choir stopped singing. People talked about the helper's corner at the diner, at the gas station, even in the pews on Sunday. For once, the chatter wasn't about the doctored video or the billionaire turned ghost. It was about kids finding books, about grandmothers signing up to read stories aloud, about hope stretching its limbs in a small Georgia town. But shadows don't dissolve just because sunlight is strong. They wait. 3 days after the dedication, I walked out of Dolly's coffee shop with a paper cup of black coffee in my hand, steam curling into the morning air. Abigail had warned me, Jackson won't just walk away. Not when he smells leverage. I didn't have to wait long to see she was right. Across the street, parked in front of a polished black sedan, stood the man himself. Jackson Greer. Same crisp suit, same perfect hair slicked back like armor, same look of faint irritation that the world didn't instantly bend to his will. Mr. Brandt, he said smoothly as I approached. His voice hadn't changed, still low, controlled, trained to close deals in boardrooms. Or do you prefer just Tyler now? Depends on who's asking, I replied. My grip tightened on the coffee cup. An old friend, he said, though the curl at the corner of his lips made the word sound like a threat. He extended a business card. I've been looking for you. I didn't take it. Found me. His smile didn't falter. The dedication was touching. A whole town rallied around you. Very moving. But Tyler, you and I both know truth is more complicated than murals and children's hugs. Maybe that's why you don't understand it, I shot back. The mask cracked for a moment, just a flicker, but then he leaned closer. You think you can hide here forever? You're trending again. The grocery store fiasco, the little girl, the playground, the library. People are watching. You could turn this into something bigger. A rebrand. A comeback. Let me help you control the story. I shook my head. I'm not a product, Jackson. Not your golden goose. Not anymore. He lowered his voice. You're wasting yourself fixing swings and sorting books. You were a leader. You changed industries. And I crushed people under deadlines, I said, my tone flat. Ignored my mother's last voicemail because I was closing a deal. You remember that too? That landed. His jaw tightened. This place is a dead end, he finally snapped, glancing around the sleepy square with disgust. You think you found redemption in a mural and some dusty books? This isn't your story. It's a distraction. No, I said calmly, meeting his gaze. It's a beginning. And it's not mine. It's theirs. I gestured toward the square, toward the families gathering near the library doors, toward Anna racing across the courtyard with her backpack bouncing. You'll never understand that. Jackson shoved the card into my pocket anyway and turned back toward the sedan. The door's open, Tyler. But it won't stay open forever. You'll come back. You always do. He slid into the car and disappeared down the road, leaving exhaust and unease behind him. I stood there, the card heavy in my pocket, my coffee cooling in my hand. For a moment, doubt crept in like a cold draft. Was he right? Had I only built a fragile house of trust, one lie or one headline away from collapse? Mr. Tyler. Anna's voice cut through my thoughts. She barreled into me, clutching a drawing, crayon scribbles of me planting flowers, a speech bubble floating over my cartoon self that read, "Let's build hope." You like it? She asked breathlessly. I crouched, my throat tightening. I love it. You turned me into a superhero. She giggled. Not a superhero. A helper. Mara appeared then, arms crossed, studying me. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. Maybe I did, I murmured, standing. I pulled Jackson's card from my pocket, stared at the embossed letters for a long beat, then walked to a trash can and dropped it inside. The card caught on a crumpled fast food wrapper and disappeared. Mara's eyes softened. Good. That night, as Anna slept upstairs, Mara and I sat on the balcony with lukewarm tea. The town below us hummed with quiet, the kind of silence you earn. He's not done, I said finally. I know, she replied. But neither are you. Her confidence in me felt heavier than Jackson's threats. Because one demanded my past. The other trusted my present. And as I turned the purple stone in my pocket, its edges smooth from weeks of carrying, I realized something simple. I didn't need to win Jackson's war. I only needed to keep showing up for Dawsonville's peace. The calm didn't last. In Dawsonville, news usually traveled by word of mouth, Dolly's coffee shop chatter, church potlucks, whispered stories across grocery aisles. But this time, it came like a lightning strike through the internet. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing non-stop on the motel nightstand. Abigail's name flashed on the screen. You need to see this, she said when I answered, her voice sharp with urgency. She sent me a link. My chest tightened before I even tapped it. It was a grainy video, edited to look like security footage. A hooded figure, spray paint can in hand, moving in the shadows. The frame cuts were deliberate, enough missing pieces to obscure details, enough glimpses to suggest the man was me. The caption screamed across the screen, the truth about Dawsonville's new savior caught in the act. Thousands of shares. Thousands of comments. Most from strangers who had never set foot in Dawsonville. But the names I recognized, the local ones, cut the deepest. People I had laughed with, worked beside, eaten with. Their doubt scrolled in black letters across my phone. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. By noon, I walked into Dolly's coffee shop. The usual warmth was gone. Conversations dimmed. Dolly herself looked pale behind the counter, her hand gripping a rag that had stilled mid-wipe. I know it's not true, she said quickly, like she was reassuring herself. But folks are asking questions. I nodded slowly. I'll fix it. But fixing wasn't going to be easy. Outside the community center, a crowd had gathered. Not a mob, yet, but not friendly either. Men in worn jeans and work boots. Women with arms folded tight, clutching their phones like proof. A low murmur hung over them, like storm clouds pressing down. I stepped forward, my palms clammy. I know what you've seen, I said, my voice carrying across the space. I've seen it too. And I'm telling you, it isn't me. A scoff came from the back. Looks like you. Walks like you. Another voice cut in, why would someone frame you, huh? Doesn't make sense. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. Because I left a world that doesn't forgive. Because the people I used to stand beside don't like it when someone walks away and starts building something real. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some looked convinced. Others didn't. Then, Mara stepped forward, her scrubs still creased from a night shift. She raised her chin. My daughter and I were with him the night that mural was defaced. He wasn't out painting walls. He was sitting at our kitchen table, helping Anna with her science project. The murmurs softened. Abigail moved next, holding up her phone. I checked the metadata on that so-called footage. It's been tampered with. Spliced and edited. Whoever posted it wanted you to believe it. Silence. And then, from the front, Mr. Jenkins, the retired contractor, spoke. His voice was slow, gravelly, but firm. I don't know much about tech tricks. But I know that kid. He pointed to Anna, who clutched her purple stone fiercely. She wouldn't follow a liar. And I trust her judgment more than any video. The tension cracked. A few chuckles. A few nods. The storm lightened. Anna's small voice cut through it all, he's a helper. Helpers don't lie. That sealed it more than anything else I, or anyone else, could have said. The crowd dispersed slowly, not with cheers, but with something better, relief. A chance to breathe again. That evening, I sat on Mara's porch, exhausted, the purple stone heavy in my palm. Mara joined me, setting down 2 cups of tea. You think it's over? I asked quietly. No, she said honestly, her gaze steady. But I think you're stronger than whatever's coming. I looked at her, something deep loosening in my chest. I wasn't before. You are now, she said simply. And for the first time that day, I believed her. Because maybe the noise would never stop. Maybe Jackson, or whoever else was pulling strings, would never quit. But I wasn't running anymore. I was staying. And sometimes, staying was the loudest truth of all. The morning after the confrontation with the doctored video, Dawsonville woke to a town divided. Some folks believed the lie. Others held firm to what they had seen with their own eyes, a man sweating through hours of labor, painting playgrounds, repairing swings, hauling books into a library. But division can only last so long in a small town. People here share grocery aisles, share pews, share storm seasons and borrowed tools. And when trust fractures, it doesn't stay fractured quietly. It demands mending. That day, the mending began. Inside the helpers' corner, volunteers moved with renewed determination. Parents arrived with boxes of donated books, old paperbacks with spines taped and names scrawled in faded cursive. Retirees sorted through the stacks, chuckling at titles they hadn't seen in decades. Children sprawled across rugs, their laughter bouncing against freshly painted walls. The air was thick with the smell of paper and polish, the sound of hammers still echoing as new shelves went up. It was chaos, but it was alive. I found myself at the sorting table beside Mara, who handed me a chipped mug full of pencils. We're trying to build something stronger, she said, meeting my eyes. One brick of trust at a time. Her words anchored me. By midday, more townsfolk arrived. A group of high school students carried in art supplies, eager to start a mural inside the children's nook. Mr. Jenkins stood by the door, holding a stack of donation cards from local businesses, enough to keep the lights on for a year, enough to hire a part-time librarian. Cheers broke out when he read the total aloud. Abigail slipped in quietly, notebook in hand. But today, she didn't take notes. She simply watched. And when our eyes met, she nodded, as if to say, "This is your answer to the lies, no press release, no defense. Just this." In the afternoon, Mayor Walden called the room to order. His voice filled the library wing like sunlight fills a dark room. Some said that video was the last blow. That trust was broken. But here we are. Shelves filled. Children reading. Neighbors building together. Let this be the truth: Dawsonville stands with those who build, not those who tear down. Applause thundered. For once, it wasn't for me. It was for us. Later, as dusk fell, we gathered outside for a small potluck under the pines. Folding tables groaned under casseroles, cornbread, and peach cobbler. The mural glowed in the fading light, no longer defaced but reborn. Anna tugged my sleeve, leading me to the center of the crowd. Her small voice rang out with the unself-conscious bravery of children. "He's a helper. Helpers don't lie." Her words silenced even the crickets. Then cheers erupted, louder than before. I felt my throat tighten as Mara joined her, standing steady beside her daughter. "He stayed when it would have been easier to run," she said simply. "That's all the proof I need." I stood still, the purple stone in my pocket hot against my palm. Because in that moment, I realized the smear campaign wasn't just an attack on me. It was a test for Dawsonville. A test of whether this town believed in noise, or in what it had touched with its own hands. And Dawsonville chose. The Helper's Corner was no longer just a library wing. It was a symbol. One that couldn't be erased by pixels on a screen. That night, as lanterns swayed above the courtyard, I leaned back on the wooden bench beneath the mural. Anna curled beside me, half asleep. Mara sat on the other side, sipping tea. I thought of Jackson's smirk, of the video lies, of the headlines that still whispered my name. But here, in the hum of crickets and laughter, I knew the truth. Empires can collapse with a scandal. But community, the kind built from casseroles, crayons, and courage, outlasts the noise. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because I wasn't standing alone anymore. 10 years later, Dawsonville woke to a morning brushed in soft gold. The courthouse bell rang steady in the square, and children's voices echoed from the playground behind the Helper's Corner. What had once been a dusty, forgotten library wing was now alive with color and purpose, walls covered in murals painted by generations of students, shelves filled with books donated from families across Georgia, and a courtyard that hosted weekly markets, concerts, and story nights under lantern light. I sat on the same wooden bench where it all began, the purple stone still in my pocket, smooth now from years of carrying. Beside me sat Anna, no longer the little girl with braids and scuffed shoes, but a young woman with her mother's steadiness and her father's fearless spark. Her hair framed her face as she flipped through a notebook full of lesson plans. She was preparing to leave for college in the fall, though she swore she'd return on weekends to run the children's story hour. "You ready?" Mara asked, stepping out of the library with a tray of sweet tea. Her hair carried strands of silver now, but her strength hadn't faded. If anything, it had deepened. She set the tray on the table and gave me a look I knew too well, the look that asked if my heart could handle the weight of today. Because today was the 10-year anniversary of the crumpled $10 bill. The day Anna stood in a grocery store aisle and offered me dignity when the world tried to strip it away. The courtyard filled quickly. Families, elders, teenagers who had once been children tugging on swings I repaired. Tourists mingled with locals, curious about the story they'd read online but eager to feel the truth in person. A banner hung from the library's arch, 10 years of helping, a celebration of community, legacy, and truth. Mayor Walden, older now but still carrying the same steady voice, stepped up to the podium. 10 years ago, a man came to Dawsonville a stranger. A little girl gave him $10. And from that seed, something far greater grew. Today we celebrate not a man, not a mural, not even this building. We celebrate what it means to help. Applause rippled. I rose when he beckoned me forward. My throat tightened as I looked over the faces, neighbors, friends, people who once doubted, people who once mocked, and people who now stood shoulder to shoulder in a chorus of belonging. I came here broken, I began, my voice steady but low. I thought I could disappear in this town. Instead, you saw me. Anna saw me. And in helping me, she taught me how to help again. I gestured to the building behind us, its windows glowing in the late morning light. The Helper's Corner is not my legacy. It's ours. Every book shelved, every mural painted, every meal shared under these lanterns belongs to Dawsonville. This place is proof that kindness doesn't fade when storms come, it roots deeper. Truth outlives noise. And community outlives doubt. My words caught for a moment, but I didn't fight it. I once believed my worth was measured in numbers and headlines. But I've learned that legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in porches, in playgrounds, in libraries, in the hands of people who refuse to let kindness die. The applause rose, but softer this time, reverent, as though the crowd knew this wasn't a speech for clapping, it was a truth to be held. Then Anna stepped forward, holding a framed drawing. It was the same one she'd made years ago, of me planting flowers with the words "Let's build hope." But now it had been updated, the library, the playground, the mural, even the courthouse, all drawn in her hand, with stick figures of neighbors holding hands across the town square. She handed it to me. "You told me helpers don't lie," she said, her voice clear. So I made sure we remembered. I pulled her into a hug, my throat burning. "You changed me," I whispered. Mara stood close, her hand resting on my shoulder. For the first time, I realized the storm of doubt that once shadowed me had long passed. What remained was light, steady and grounded. That evening, lanterns swayed over the courtyard as Dawsonville gathered for a meal, casseroles, cobbler, fresh bread, laughter that carried into the night. I sat with Mara and Anna on the bench as fireflies blinked in the tall pines, the mural glowing softly behind us. I thought of Jackson Greer, of headlines long buried, of the empire I had walked away from. None of it mattered now. Because here, in this imperfect, stubborn little town, I had found something better than power, a home. And as the stars wheeled overhead, I pressed the purple stone one last time. Not as a reminder, but as a promise kept. Because legacies aren't measured in wealth or fame. They are measured in roots. And Dawsonville had given me mine.